first of all, many people want to clarify what exactly are the ambitions and the egos behind China's recent plan for military reform. I want to have your opinion very briefly first, General Zhu.
First, I think China's military is moving directly to the common practice of the advanced military powers of the world today. For example, the army, as you know, it is the common service. Every country has army, but in the past, Chinese military was army dominated. Therefore, the general headquarters are actually played functions of the army headquarters. So this is different. Secondly, I think it is for the modernization and also the regularization of the development of the armed forces of China.
Mr. Zhang, I certainly noticed, Mr. Captain, that you are coming from the Navy. Yes. And as Captain Zhu earlier, General Zhu earlier explained, is this going to be a change? Is the weight of China's Navy as a result of recent years of conflict, for example, in the South China Sea, likely to be raised as a result of this new plan?
Well, I think the Chinese PRA Navy will certainly get strengthened during this round of defense and military reform. Sure, but I think the overall goal for this round of military reform is to build a modern military with Chinese characteristics, which is commensurate with the national position as a major power and also the missions it carries for the security and also for development interests.
Mr. Paal, U.S. and China certainly have already got some mil exchanges and cooperation, but still suspicion always running high. What do you make of China's plan and the explanations coming from the other two gentlemen here in Beijing?
I think most analysts of the Chinese military here in the United States would recognize the arguments from General Zhu and Captain Zhang. These are natural developments. The Chinese Army has been too large and the Navy and Air Force too underrepresented over time. In the last 20 years, especially the last 10 years, China's interests abroad have greatly expanded, and to protect those interests, you need mobile forces. So it's seen as quite a natural development of for an economy and a power like China to make some adjustments. In fact, they are mostly seen as overdue and in need of pretty quick implementation.
The Navy has always been a big focus. China has now, Mr. Paal, talking about building the second aircraft carrier with its own technology. Earlier we know the very first one is rather a study model coming from another country. What does that mean for the United States, as the U.S. has been talking about rebalancing in Asia, and meanwhile U.S. Navy has been sending some of its ships to some of the rather conflicted areas in the South China Sea over the past few months. What do you make of these movements coming from the Chinese side?
Well, I think it's primarily a psychological achievement to have two aircraft carriers off the shores of China's neighbors or more distant countries causes ordinary people to think more seriously about China's military capabilities and its effectiveness in protecting its own interests. However, aircraft carriers also represent huge vulnerabilities, and they're extremely difficult to operationalize. Learning how to use them effectively in a combat or to preempt a conflict is not easy. It's pretty tough stuff, and China has a long way to go. Right. So we're not particularly concerned. The downside of this rapid modernization of the Navy and Air Force is that China's neighbors are not going to sit idle. They're going to do things to protect what they think are their interests if they see China gaining a predominance over them that they need to correct. And so this is not cost-free for China to push ahead on these important programs.
Captain Zhang, of course, I have to go to you for a response. First of all, It seems that Mr. Paul is not as confident as you were earlier, talking about this new aircraft carrier and its significance. And secondly, what would China's move mean for the others, their reactions? And will that invite more counter reactions coming from China? And will that continue in the region?
Well, I think 2 points. First is that it is a real improvement of the Chinese naval capability with the building of the second aircraft carrier. And also we know that this is a symbol of the national strength, military strength, especially the naval strength. But on the other hand, I agree with Mr. Paul that other countries needn't worry about China's aircraft carrier. Compared with the United States, 10 aircraft carriers with the displacement of 100,000 tons, China's aircraft are too small. And also for the neighbors.
Does China see U.S. military, especially Navy, as a threat as a result?
I don't think so. The United States shouldn't take China's Navy as a threat now, compared with the large number of the aircraft carriers in the United States.
But does China take the U.S. as a threat?
I don't think so. I don't think so. And also, I think the Chinese neighbors should not worry about this, because China has the need to build aircraft carriers. We have a coastline of more than 18,000 kilometers, and also we have the sea lines of communications to protect. And previously, other countries accused China of using the public goods provided by the United States. But in the future, with the aircraft carrier, we can provide some security goods to the international security society, especially in the protection of sea lines of communication.
General Zhu, want to have your opinion as well about this. What would that mean? That China has been taking steps to reform its military. What if others take it the way differently from what China hopes they would? And will that escalate a buildup of military powers in the region?
I think the races are there, not only between China and the United States, but also between China and Japan, and even among some countries in Southeast Asia, especially among those countries on the rim of the South China Sea. So it's there. And I believe that China's development of the armed forces is still very, very limited if you look at the past. And I think the development is reactive instead of initiative.
Reactive to what?
Reactive to the military activities on the periphery of China.
On the other hand, General Zhu, what do you make of this round of reform? Will that mean or have significant impact on China's possibility of having international cooperation with other militaries? Is this chance increasing or is this chance decreasing because China is having a stronger military? General Zhu.
I think, generally speaking, it should increase the chances for cooperation between Chinese military and the militaries of other countries, including the military of the United States. I think in this regard, China would have much stronger capabilities in providing the escort, for example, the escort operations or the protection of the safety and the security of the sea lanes of communication. And also in this area, in the east, in the West Pacific, as well as on the Malacca Strait.
I see.
There are the piracies there. So I think China and the neighboring countries, and even including the United States, can cooperate in this sort of operations. I think it all depends how the outsiders look at the development.
Depends on the perceptions, isn't
yes,
it? So
that's
what
right.
about the perceptions that Mr. Paul, of course, whether countries are competitors, whether they are partners, they all need to know one another. But the question is, will ideological barrier, will some of the perceptional issues get in the way, preventing the two militaries or politicians and the militaries interaction between these two countries? Mr. Paul.
Well, I think perceptions are and often will be a problem. India is well ahead of China with aircraft carriers, and yet nobody talks about the Indian threat. People do perceive that China, not being a democracy, could use its military for purposes that are ideologically threatening. The evidence isn't really there yet, but there's a suspicion and a perception that will be with us for a long time, and it has to be managed. I have to say, China has done a terrific job since 2012 at stepping up its military-to-military ties with the United States and other countries.
Right.
It's been across the board. The Chinese military leadership is showing up in capitals everywhere, and it improved. And the very announcements that we've had in the last 2 weeks of the changes in the Chinese military reflect a transparency that was being called for by the international community 7, 8 years ago, and China has made big steps forward. So I think that helps to deal with this perception problem.
All right. Captain Zhang, before we go, very briefly from you, what do you make of that, the possibility of further cooperation, not just with the United States and European unions, but also with China's neighboring countries?
Yes, with the improvement of the Chinese Imperial Navy, I think we will provide more public security groups, and we can carry out more international responsibilities and duties.